For the final word in sports all across the state, you're listening to Sports Talk with your hosts Phil Kornbluth, Will Pelagic, and the Professor Tom Hayes. You've been waiting all day, so join the show now by calling 800-956-7266.
This ain't about Clemson. This is about Syracuse. They outplayed us, outcoached us, and give them a ton of credit. This was a football game that they just flat out wanted more than we did, and that's 100% on me.
We made stops in the red zone. When you play a good red zone defense, it's going to give you a chance to win ball games. We made some really good adjustments offensively in the second half, a 9-minute scoring drive, a 6-minute scoring drive. We ran the ball extremely well in the second half against a front that's very difficult to move inside. They've got really good inside players, so extremely proud of that with 3 linemen down.
And good evening, everybody. Welcome back into Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network. Phil Kornbluth, Will Pelagic, with you from downtown Columbia. Professor Tom Hayes taking the week off.
Man,
as
gets
he
unlimited
deserves
vacation.
to get. Yes, he does. Yes, he does. We have, of course, a ton of stuff to go over. Let me give you the phone number so you can chime in. 800-956-7266. 800-956-7266. This first hour is really between you and us here at Sports Talk. We're going to share some thoughts with you and then hear what you have to say. Second hour, we'll have our first and 10 segments with Zach Willis as he breaks down the USC win and the Clemson loss.
Hard to get out of your mouth?
Loss.
The Clemson loss.
Well, remember now, I had said they'd never lose again in the rest of humanity, but they proved me wrong up at Syracuse. So we'll be talking, of course, in detail about that. I was in Knoxville. You were in Syracuse. Sports Talk, once again, the only sports talk show in South Carolina covering Clemson and South Carolina on a daily and weekend basis. Our work doesn't end on the weekend. We're there with the teams. We're in the locker rooms. We're talking to the coaches and the players. We can tell you firsthand, not just you can hear the words. We can tell you the emotion, the passion, and the expressions of the people we cover. For example, what kind of face was Dabo making when he talked about the loss Friday night?
It was a very big scowl, and we were in a very cramped room. As you know, the setup up there, basically in a room that's no bigger than our studio, cramped with about 20 people in there, looking at Dabo Swinney. He looked like a beaten man, and I think Clemson as a whole looked like a beaten team. And the thing that I want to take the head coach of the Clemson Tigers to task on is that he showed an extreme amount of negligence in keeping Kelly Bryant out there on that football field Friday night. You could tell after the first drive, where he wasn't necessarily asked to do anything too strenuous with that ankle, that he was a wounded animal out there, Kelly Bryant. He was not his right self. He was moving gingerly on that ankle. The players afterwards said it looked like he had tweaked it in the second quarter. Could not move. They did not run any of the design runs they usually run with him, and he could not protect himself. And too often, he was getting pummeled. He only was sacked once, but it seemed like every time he went back to pass, he was trying to get himself up off the ground. And each time he got hit, it was taking longer and longer and longer for him to get up. And the fact that he basically tried to scramble out of a sack and then got suplexed by a defensive player from Syracuse, the nail in the coffin for the Clemson Tigers this past weekend was the fact that Dabo Swinney did not recognize that he was not ready to go. And whether or not he wants to say that Kelly Bryant didn't miss a rep, or he wanted to say that he looked good throughout the whole week, by the time his game was over, he was not looking good, and he needed to do what was best for the team and take him out. Secondly, I don't know why he went with Zarek Cooper over Hunter Johnson. That, to me, was an unconscionable decision. Anybody who saw the Wake Forest game, and I was there for that as well, knows that Hunter Johnson is the better passer of the two. I mean, Zarek Cooper is missing guys by 20 yards. Hunter Johnson went 5 of 5 against Wake Forest. And I don't know if it's because they like what Cooper can do with his legs, but Hunter Johnson's the better option at quarterback for them between those two. So I don't know why that was made. And thirdly, on Dabo Swinney, I understand he had made this trip to Alabama after or with a lot of planning involved, and I know that he wanted to be with his 1992 team. After that loss, to still make that trip shows an intense amount of a lack of sincerity toward his team and a lack of detail. And I know it only took a couple of hours, and I know that they were even gone before the game started. But in my mind, that's an incredibly insensitive move by Dabo Swinney, an incredibly selfish move, and an incredibly insensitive move. So I got 3 gripe points there. Not taking Kelly out, not using Zarek Cooper, or using Hunter Johnson, or not using Hunter Johnson instead of Zarek Cooper, and still taking the trip to Alabama after the loss. Completely dumb.
Yeah. Well, 2 of them I can go with you with. I got no problem with the trip to Alabama. Pre-planned, win or lose, he was going to go. His former team was there.
Don't care.
Okay. I mean, I don't have a problem with that. Now, your other points about starting Kelly Bryant and sticking with him and then going with Cooper and not Johnson, those are very legitimate opinions on as I see it. And, does that mean because they push Bryant out there, maybe at less than 100%, that they just don't have confidence in the 2 backups right now to think that they can start and win a ball game for them?
That's more of an indictment on them than it is necessarily anything that having to do with Kelly Bryant. I think if they can't get either of those 2 backups to play the kind of football that's representative of Clemson that would equal a wounded Kelly Bryant, then that's on them. Because there's no reason to think that they couldn't have won that football game had they started one of those 2 guys and said, you know what, Kelly, you are not playing this week. You took a very, very bad fall, and you just don't look the same.
Well, remember, we talked during the week last week about the idea, would it not be smart to sit Kelly Bryant because you have the off week, give him that last week, and then the off week, 2 full weeks to get healthy.
Exactly.
On a bum ankle that you can continue to re-aggravate, and you're going up to play on a really hard surface there inside the dome on that artificial surface. And as things turned out, it wasn't the ankle that really knocked him out. It was the concussion.
But it had nothing to do. The ankle affected his ability to move, and he was not able to be as mobile and make the kind of decisions that he normally makes. And I know trying to say that an ankle has to do with a concussion is a very, very far stretch. But I said to you,
I think it makes good sense. Right, he's not able to get away from the from the pass rush. He's not able to make those runs to the sideline, and that makes perfectly good sense.
And it wasn't like Clemson's offensive staff didn't notice it. They were calling less of the design runs, like I said before about Kelly Bryant. And to me, it seemed very, very much a severe lack of negligence.
All right, from a South Carolina standpoint, in their locker room after the game with Will Muschamp in Knoxville, an expression of deep satisfaction.
Yes.
For going up and winning a hard-fought game. Say what you want to say about Tennessee. South Carolina's history with Tennessee. Anytime South Carolina gets a win over a Tennessee or a Georgia or a Florida, regardless of how good the opponent happens to be, is a plus for South Carolina because the history is so one-sided against South Carolina. So to get that win up there was huge. To do it the way they did it, they start off very shakily. The offense was not working at all, no running game whatsoever, had trouble stopping Tennessee between the 20s, but stopped them in the red zone 3 times. Tennessee had 21 snaps inside the red zone and no touchdowns. So Muschamp was very proud of the fact that his team, which works on red zone defense and red zone plays all the time, they were able to rise up in those situations. Then offensively, they totally turned it around in the second half. Got the running game going, finished with a season-high 190 rushing yards. Bentley ran the ball well when had his I would imagine they were predetermined calls for the most part. A.J. Turner gave him a nice spark running the football as well. And so they hold on. I mean, it was scary there at the very end, to be quite honest with you. I thought that they were dead meat as Tennessee moved that ball down the field and got it to the 2-yard line. I'm thinking to myself, surely on 2 plays, they got a third play. Somehow they were able to get a playoff in under 3 seconds and have a second left on the clock. And they got 3 shots at it from the 2 and could not complete a pass. So that's a huge win. First time since 2013, the Gamecocks have 5 wins before November. An off week. Vanderbilt coming in should get you 6 wins. And then you go into November feeling pretty good about
these
yourself.
Last 2 weeks have completely changed my outlook on the rest of the season for South Carolina.
All right, we'll get your thoughts on that and take calls here in a moment on Sports Talk.
Sports Talk is the sports talk show of Main Street, South Carolina. From the coast to the mountains, we cover it all.
Yeah, I'm tripped. I was stumbling, fell lost in disgrace. Got myself caught up in your grace.
Okay, we're back at Sports Talk South Carolina Radio Network. 800-956-7266 is our phone number. Want to remind you that brought to you by your local South Carolina Electric Cooperative, the sponsor of the annual Touchstone Energy Cooperatives Bowl. To find out more about what the co-ops are doing all across the state, visit ecsc.org. And save that date, December 9th, for the 2017 Touchstone Energy Cooperatives Bowl.
I did want to at least give props to Clemson on one effect. You gain a greater appreciation of how good of a job the event staff at Clemson does and the way that they have their procedure of rushing the field and that they're able to do that very safely as they rush the field at Death Valley after every game. Because when I came out from Dabo Swinney's press conference, I saw at least 4 gurneys being rolled off of the Carrier Dome field from people who got hurt trying to rush the field, people in like air casts and all kinds of stuff. So it's the people at Syracuse, they needed a bit of a tutorial on how to rush the field.
All right, before we get to phone calls, you wanted to expound on your comment at the very end about a change in view for this Clemson season. Remember now, they lost
for South Carolina.
Oh, South Carolina you're talking about. Oh,
yes.
Go right ahead.
The South Carolina season has taken a much different turn in my eyes as far as those these 2 weeks with Arkansas and with the victory over Tennessee. This defense is for real, Corn. I mean, let's be real. DJ Wanham gets SEC Defensive Player of the Week 2 consecutive weeks. He shared the honors this past week, but you're starting to see a unit that is not only playing together, but really has become the anchor of this football team. Now, I'm still waiting for the USC offense to play its first full complete game of the year, and I think you were basically the same way in the fact that they once again got off to a very slow start but turned it on in the second half. And, you know, despite the injury to Rico Dowdle, I feel very confident with their ability to run the football the way that they did, especially with committing to it as much as they did in the second half. And you saw a guy in Mon Denson who basically had his first real land shark moment because of the fact that he was able to get some big yards for them. AJ Turner had himself a good game. Tyson Williams did well. And I love that look that they have with the 2 running backs on the field at the same time, where you have one of them block and the other one running the jet sweep look. That's one of the best plays that Kurt Roper has in his system. So he has brought himself back in favor with a lot of USC fans, I think. Although people will be mad about the fact that they only scored 15 points.
Well, don't forget about Hayden Hurst as they did on Saturday. I think he touches. You got to get Hayden Hurst more involved in terms of getting the ball in his hands.
Totally
that would be
agree.
one thing that I would cite. But they came out in the second half. They were very physical. Like you said, they were dedicated to the run game, and they did this with a patchwork offensive line. Now, they're going to get their offensive line healthy come Vanderbilt, and they'll get Zach Bailey back. They'll get Corey Helms back, Malik Young back. And you're right. The good thing is they're deep at running back. You hate to lose Rico Dowdle because he was just starting to get it going a little bit. But Turner and Tyson Williams and Mon Denson, and they've also got Kinlaw. They're going to bring along as the 4th running back. So, but the one thing I would remind them of is that Hayden Hurst is a really good player, and you should probably try. Maybe they did call more plays for him and just couldn't get him the football, but I'd make sure I get the ball in his hands 5 or 10 times a game.
Truth.
All right. Let's see. To your calls in just a moment. I do want to say that, of course, I'm heartbroken over Aaron Rodgers. I'll get over it, but we'll move forward, and we're still the Packers. We're still the best, and we're not going anywhere. Okay?
Funny.
We're not going anywhere.
And the Jets got jobbed.
Who cares? The Jets.
They got jobbed.
This week, you'll be in Nashville on Wednesday.
Yes.
SEC Basketball Media Day is coming up on Wednesday.
Technically tomorrow and Wednesday. But
Correct,
yes.
correct. So we'll be there for that. Also, Wednesday night, I want to remind everybody that Sports Talk will be back on the road as we continue with our series of on-location broadcasts, our Pigskin Preview live show. We have been at various spots around the state. Wednesday night coming will be in beautiful Newberry.
My heart's broken to miss that.
Yeah, at Bar Figaro, right in downtown, corner of Main and Nance, across from the Hampton Inn. We invite you to come out and join us. Big game coming up for the Wolves, they take on Limestone. Tough loss for Newberry. Had their long league winning streak broken in overtime. On Saturday, we'll have the coaches with us and others from there at Newberry. So we look forward to that. All right. Oh, our poll question of the week. How will Clemson respond to its first loss? Run the table, lose at least once more, lose at least twice more. 53% say they'll lose at least one more time.
Interesting.
28% say twice more, and run the table about 19%. You look at the rest of their schedule. Of course, Georgia Tech is Georgia Tech. They suffered a heartbreaking loss at Miami. Maybe should have won that game. Defense broke down at the very end, allowed them to go down the field, kick a game-winning field goal. But Georgia Tech, being what they do, is always tough. Then you got to go to NC State. That might be the game for that division, the way everything has worked out so far this year. Florida State still to come, always dangerous. So there's still some work to be done for Clemson, and the USC game looms larger than ever before the way the Gamecocks are playing. I'm telling you, there is now no reason to think when they get to 6 wins, beat Vanderbilt, which they should, at home, go to Georgia. Okay, I'm not going to sit here and say they'll beat Georgia. Georgia's having one of those years. But there's no reason they cannot beat Florida. Florida hasn't shown me jack so far this year. I mean, really. They haven't, they had they ended up, they lost to LSU 2 weeks ago, right?
Correct.
And then they lose this past weekend. That's a very
it's a winnable game,
and they'll probably get beat up by Georgia. Very winnable game at home. So what we're talking about for the Gamecocks, you should be looking at an 8-win regular season now. You should be looking at least. And listen, Clemson, South Carolina, last game of the regular season in Columbia, and Syracuse was a 54-point victim to Clemson last year, and turned around and won this year. And South Carolina was a 50-something point victim to Clemson last year. And you know that in the back of Will Muschamp's mind, I know it's week by week, but he hasn't forgotten that Clemson game.
And Georgia Tech is a game that looms large now for Clemson because you don't know the status of Kelly Bryant. I know that Dabo Swinney said he looked better, but at the same time, you wonder about that game. You wonder about the game at NC State. Everything's in question. Everything's on the table right now for Clemson. You lose to Syracuse, puts everything else on the table.
But I will say this, and we'll get to your calls in a second. Just like last year, when Clemson lost to Pittsburgh last year.
Everything's on the table.
No. When they lost to Clemson last year, everybody else in the top 4 or 5 lost.
Yes.
So that softened their descent.
It's much like this year.
7 teams in the top 25 lost on Saturday. So even though Clemson fell to like number 7.
Wasn't nearly as bad as it could have been.
Exactly. Washington lost. Washington State lost.
Washington lost as well.
Washington lost as well. So on down the list, that made it a little bit easier for Clemson in terms of the rankings. All right, to the phones we go. 800-956-7266. Travis and Sumter, hello and welcome to Sports Talk.
Hey, guys. How y'all doing today?
What's up?
Good.
2 things. Talk about Clemson for a minute and the issue with Kelly. I don't buy that Dabo failed to see that he was struggling out there. I think their game plan was to get ahead and then bring in second string and work those guys out a little bit because it'd be easier to maintain a little bit of a lead than play catch up. And he stuck him out there too long. To come back from a concussion, come back from his ankle still being injured, he's going to be, I feel like, a little gun shy at least in the next game or 2.
I personally think that he should have recognized more quickly that he had himself an ankle issue because here's the thing. It's one thing to have to rehab an ankle. It's another thing to have to rehab an ankle and also come off of a concussion. I think he basically risked Kelly Bryant's safety by leaving him out there.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And then 2, with Carolina, what are y'all's thoughts as far as the Cardiac Cocks are known for it to either come in strong the first half and completely bomb in the second, or bomb through the first and then come out strong. It almost feels like you've got somebody besides Roper calling the calls, especially in this last game in the second half.
No, Roper's calling all the plays. There's no question about it. They just, you said it right. I mean, a complete game on offense they've really not had yet. That they're still, we're still looking for that smooth, shiny offensive machine we've been waiting for.
Still not there.
And we'll pick up on that after the break.
More of your calls are coming up on Sports Talk. Hit us up at 800-956-7266.
We're blowing up today, pal. Blowing up.
We are back. Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network, 800-956-7266. Let's continue on the phone lines in hour number 2. We'll have the coach, Zach Willis, with us. 1st and 10, David Shelton as well, reviewing the high schools. A visit from the voice of the Panthers, Mick Mixon. Couple of recruiting notes as well. Mark and Aiken, welcome into Sports Talk tonight. How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm glad you got me on. I think I have to hang up.
No.
I just want to say that I just wanted to say that nobody should be surprised with Kelly Bryant being left in there, because you remember about 4 years ago, Sweeney loved to brag about how a one-legged Deshaun Watson beat Carolina by himself. So that just shows the arrogance of the coach to put this one out there. He got away with it against Carolina, but he beat him in the butt against Syracuse. And another thing, he has no business in the Syracuse locker room after the ball game. He spoke to the coach on the field. He speaks to the players. That's his arrogance, just wanting to go in there like, I'm the king. Y'all beat me, so I'm coming to congratulate y'all. But he needs to stay out of the visitors' locker room. I'll hang up. Thanks for taking my call.
I was going to bring that up and kind of ask the opinion of that. That's most unusual for just a typical regular season game. Now, I don't know the relationship between Dabo and Dino Babers. If they're close friends, have a history going back for years or whatever. Maybe Dabo, let's face it. I mean, he is one of the kings of college football right now, reigning national champion, and maybe he just felt like it was a nice gesture on his part to go and commend an underdog team for to be the first team to beat the reigning national champions.
He was doing that to exercise either his own ego or his own recruiting
you're
prowess.
Really in a Dabo bad mood
I'm
today,
I'm anti Dabo this week, man. He did not show out well to me this past weekend. I like Dabo as a person, and I like him as a coach, but he made so many missteps to me this week that it was shocking. It was shocking to me.
All right, thank you for your call. Let's go to Glenn in North Charleston. Welcome into Sports Talk, Glenn. How are you?
How you all doing?
Good.
I just want to say congratulations to Miss Muschamp for a great win, and they did win it outright. In Tennessee, I don't know about that coach, but anytime I would say he should get the axe and good riddance. And
I think Tennessee would be making a horrible mistake in firing Butch Jones.
Really?
Yes. You cannot keep firing coaches every 3 or 4 years and expect, you're not getting John Gruden, okay, Tennessee fans, unless you want to pay him $10 million a year. You just keep getting deeper and deeper into the hole that you dug when you fired Philip Fulmer, going back to whenever that was. And so you just got to pull up your pants and stick with a guy. If you're the administration, if you like him personally, he's good to work with, you feel like he's doing all the other things. And look, he's having to go through what a lot of teams have to go through, and that is breaking in a new quarterback. And you take your lumps when you're doing that. Now, Clemson also breaking in a new quarterback, they have a defense that kind of helps to cover that up. Obviously, their offense is not as dynamic as it was the past couple of years. You don't lose Deshaun Watson, who, by the way, is doing the same thing to NFL defenses that he did to college defenses, okay? I think it's pretty clear that general managers around the NFL who skipped on Deshaun Watson are kicking themselves right now. So to fire Butch Jones, I think, as an outsider, would just be another stupid move by Tennessee.
Normally, I would say correct. Well,
usually when I make an opinion, most people do say correct.
Normally, I would say correct. But looking at his overall record, 33-24 overall, he's 14-21 in SEC play. 2-6, 3-5, 5-3, 4-4, and 0-3. And in 2 of those years,
but go back the last 2 years.
4-4 and 0-3.
No, before this year.
5-3 and 4-4. They were picked to win the East in those 2 years. That's the problem.
Yeah,
and that's short of expectations. It's one thing to try and build a program. It's another thing to have expectations festooned upon your program and not meet them.
All right. Well, I mean, look, I know Tennessee has a proud history and all that kind of stuff.
It was not about Tennessee.
He recruits well, and he's got a good recruiting class coming in if he can hold it together. Now it's starting to splinter a little bit, which is typical when a coach is under fire.
No one is questioning his recruiting ability. No one's questioning the player evaluation process. He's a terrible in-game coach, and I think he's certifiable.
Okay.
Because the champions for life crap and the leadership rep crap, like the man is missing a few.
All right, let's go to Charlie in Whitmire. Hello, Charlie. Welcome to Sports Talk.
Hey, Phil, this is Charlie Jenkins.
Well, hey, Coach, how you doing?
I'm doing all right.
I think, if I'm not mistaken, you got a win. Yes, you did, doggone it.
Yep. So we're 4-4, 2-0 in the region, and heading into a big game with Dixie this week.
I'm staying on that bandwagon, Charlie.
Good, but yeah, I was calling to defend Dabo. That's I can't. I usually try to be positive when I call, but dadgum, I just can't believe how quickly people forget or how people turn on Dabo's character. Maybe I just, it's unbelievable. And so I got a couple quick things. I'm not going to second guess coaches who are out there with those kids every day. I'm talking about the Clemson coaches, and they know their guys. And quarterbacks play hurt sometimes, and everybody is happy about that when they do. When we talk about how tough they are, and I'm sure that the coaches thought that his leadership was worth a lot on the field, and that they thought that they beat Syracuse by 50 the year before. I actually went to that game last year, and I watched Syracuse walk off the field. I happened to be sitting right there near the visitors' tunnel, and they looked like Newberry College could give them a game. They were just not toned physically. They were small, and I thought they'd beat them by 50 again. But I'm sure they thought they would get through Syracuse, and that then he'd have 2 weeks to get healthy. And I can't believe anybody would think that Dabo Swinney or any of the Clemson coaches would do something that they think was going to personally, jeopardize a guy's health. But anyway, with the backup situation again, those guys are out there with them every day, and I'm sure that they made the decision on who was going to come in, they thought was going to help them win the game. And sometimes as a coach, there's a million different reasons, and sometimes you can't say it to the media about this guy having a grasp on the game plan, or this guy being this or that, or one guy's a leader and one guy's a not. But I don't. That blows my mind too. That somebody would think that. I mean, they could make the wrong decision, but it's not that obvious. I mean, it's not just like because Hunter comes in and throws 5 for 5 that he's the automatic guy, because they're with him all during camp. And
right, there's so many things we don't see, and I agree with you there, Coach. But when you were watching Kelly Bryant operate in the second quarter, I mean, you tell me, he looked limited. He looked severely limited with that ankle, and in my mind, again, I don't think that's the best option for them. A limited Kelly Bryant. I'd rather see somebody out there who was healthy.
Okay. Well, and again, I would think that they would try to make the best decision that they thought was going to give them a chance to win. Maybe it didn't work out because they got a concussion, but Syracuse was just playing motivated too. But the other thing was about Dabo's trip. That blows my mind, and I've heard a lot of people talking about that. I don't know what people thought that Coach Swinney should do. I don't know if they think he's supposed to go home and slit his wrist on when he got home. But if I think Coach Swinney is a sincere guy in everything that he does, and speaks from the heart. I know he loves Coach Stallings, and Coach Stallings had a heart attack, and it might be, as I was reading on TigerNet, it might be the last time they all get together. And me coming from Union, if Coach Anthony has a reunion in Union and we play on Thursday night, would somebody get mad at me if I go on Friday? We lose on Thursday night. Would some people get mad at me if I go home for a reunion on Friday to see Coach Dula or Coach Anthony in a state championship reunion? I don't know where the animosity is coming from him scheduling that trip with those guys to go see his former coach and players he hadn't seen in 25 years.
We disagree, Will and I, on that particular point. I don't have a problem with, it's an off week. They're going to be going recruiting. They've cut back on the practice schedule. The team is they're in fall break at Clemson.
I find it disrespectful to your current program. I wouldn't see a sitting coach in an NFL team go do that move. You
got to understand the relationship too between Dabo and his former teammates and coaches. Back in a moment.
Now back to Sports Talk, South Carolina's most listened to sports talk show for more than 30 years.
All right, back to your calls in a moment. Let me hit up a few interesting notes from today that I want to share with you. We touched on some of them. The kickoff times for October 28th, Vanderbilt at USC, 4 o'clock on the SEC Network. Georgia Tech at Clemson, 8 o'clock, ABC or ESPN 2.
Fun for you. Night game.
Looking forward to that. Going to be a heck of a ball game, I think. SEC Player of the Week, co-defensive lineman, USC's DJ Wanham.
2 weeks in a row for him.
Who is playing out of his mind. He looks like he reminds me, his improvement from last year to this year reminds me of the improvement that Darius English made from his junior year to his senior year that made him into a really good football player. They've done a nice job of developing DJ Wanham.
Dude's living in the backfield right now.
He is. He's just playing great football. ACC Player of the Week, defensive lineman Cleveland Farrell of Clemson. Had a huge game against Syracuse. He was in the backfield.
He was. He was the only player on defense that looked like he gave a damn.
3.5 sacks and 5.5 tackles for loss. Southern Conference Players of the Week, Wofford quarterback Brandon Goodson, as the Terriers go to 6-0 with another close win, this one at the Citadel. And the special teamer of the week is Furman punter John Croft Hollingsworth. The FCS coaches poll for this week, Wofford stays at number 5 at 6-0, the only undefeated team left in the state and the only team from the state in the FCS coaches poll this week. Dabo Swinney on his injuries. He said that Kelly Bryant responded well to concussion protocol over the weekend. They're pretty much encouraged with him, listening to the doctors talking about him. And they hope he will practice this week. And as far as Mark Fields, a little bit banged up, limited in practice. A.J. Terrell worked out today. Hopefully, Swinney said he'll be okay as the week progresses.
And some good news from USC's offensive line. It seems that both Corey Helms and Zach Bailey, actually all three of Corey Helms, Zach Bailey, and Malik Young, according to Will Muschamp's teleconference tonight, all of them should be ready to go for Vanderbilt a week from Saturday.
All right, let's get back to the calls here. We go to James and Rock Hill next with us here on Sports Talk. Hey, James.
Hey, guys. How we doing?
Good.
What's up, James?
Good. Two things I want to say. The first being on Clemson. I think the biggest loss, and you can see it now, the biggest loss that Clemson had this year is when they lost Greg Hugel. When they lost Greg Hugel, they lost guaranteed points. When you get 40 yards in the end, Greg Hugel is going to make it. And now we're struggling making. I don't know. He missed 2 kicks the other night. I'm pretty sure both of them were inside of 40, and he just shanked them. I mean, they weren't even close. He's over kicking. He's just pulling them way bad. And the other thing I wanted to say, and then I'll hang up and just listen to y'all. I'm just not quite believing the hype on Carolina's defense just yet. I mean, you squeak by a very not good Tennessee team that hadn't scored a touchdown in about 30 quarters. You let a game slip against Texas A&M. You struggled against Louisiana Tech at home. You struggled and got beat by Kentucky at home. Struggled with NC State. Somehow, great perseverance to find a way to win that game. But I'm very interested to see. Tell me that they are that good after they play Georgia. Even if they get beat by Georgia, if they can just compete at the line of scrimmage, at the linebacker level, I'll believe it. But at this moment in time, I can't believe it. When you guys show, I'll listen to you.
Thank you. Well, look now.
Defense wasn't to blame in those losses.
No, and you go back and you're talking about them overall. They had a 2-touchdown lead on the road at Texas A&M. Ended up losing that game. Was it 2 touchdowns or 10 points? They had a double-digit lead. It was
10 points, and they lost by 4.
And they had a double-digit lead. They had a touchdown lead going in the fourth quarter. The same Texas A&M team that just went into the swamp and beat Florida.
Texas A&M is a good team.
Yeah,
and they played Alabama close too.
Exactly. Look, South Carolina has got some parts. Their problem is they just have not put the complete show together yet. Kicking game is coming along. You saw the field goal kicker, Parker White, make 3 field goals, including one from 47. Punting game's been pretty good all year. Kickoff game's been good all year. Defense, gives up yards between the 20s, 374 yards per game. But in terms of allowing points, and that is the bottom line, how many points are you giving up? They're very good inside the red zone, making you kick field goals. and they need teams to kick field goals because they're not scoring a lot of touchdowns themselves. I mean, they're not exactly world beaters when they get into the red zone. They've got to get it to still get better. I mean, I thought this offense would take off this year, and losing Deebo Samuel certainly is a huge element out of their offense that might be costing them a touchdown or more per game, not just on offense, but also in the return game.
When you're struggling on offense, you need your defense to be able to keep you in games, and that's what Carolina's D is doing.
Absolutely. So, are they – look, they're 5-2. You have to look at what the legitimate expectations were coming into the season. And at 5-2, and with a solid chance to get to 6-2, I would say they are playing above those expectations right now and raising the bar, because most of this team, depending what happens with anybody transferring or NFL stuff, most of this team, especially the offensive skill position people, they return next year. That's why I felt that 2018 would be that year under Muschamp when South Carolina could break through and make that big move in the East. But you know what? As crazy as it sounds, and it is crazy talk, but there is a path to winning the East for the Gamecocks. And very simply,
you could beat Georgia.
Win out. Florida beats Georgia, and Kentucky needs to lose twice more.
Yeah.
If that were to happen,
plausible.
Ladies and gentlemen, your SEC champions to play Alabama.
Plausible, not probable.
South Carolina Gamecocks.
Plausible, not probable.
All right, let's continue. Here on the phones on this Monday night, it is Bob in Surfside Beach. Hello, Bob. Bob, are you there, sir?
Hey, it's Billy in Surfside Beach, Phil.
I'm sorry, Billy. I wrote that down wrong, Billy.
Yeah, you know who I am, Phil. Hey, I got one real quick thing about Clemson football, and I got one thing for Will. My first thing on Clemson, oh, my God, the sky has fallen. They're 7th in the country. It's evident Kelly Bryant. I heard the great Tim Beret and Don Munson on my way in from Pepsi-Cola Friday at the beach. And Tim Beret said, Deshaun Watson, Kelly Bryant, have a smirk all you want. It's got Kelly Bryant has got duplicate stats from Deshaun last year. Might be a different team, but I'm just recording the great Tim Beret. The bottom line is Kelly gives you, he's making the throws, he's checking his reads, he runs the ball like a thoroughbred, he sits 4.5. We can not disagree that Clemson's coaching staff is just great. They know how to evaluate players, 40-3 in their last 40 games, back-to-back national championships.
I don't think we're arguing that, Billy. I mean, I think we're just arguing about the fact that he left a man in who was clearly not right to play.
Okay, now here's my and I think Clemson's going to be fine. You're hearing me. What is it? October the 16th. I'm an optimistic Clemson fan. I get it. Similar situation with with Pitt last year, but it was in Death Valley. I'm sorry for Georgia Tech. Venables has proved holding them to 69 total yards last year, Phil. But my thing, the wheel here, and I will say, and I'll go on the record, Clemson will be back in the Final Four. Let's face it. I love Dabo in these situations. I love it. But the question, the caller from Aiken, the question Dabo Swinney's character, saying he's been beating everybody's ass a lot here in opposition and anti-Clemson fans are going to hate on Dabo Swinney. He is a class act guy. I've met Dabo, and you don't need anything else. Phil, you're a smart man. You know Dabo Swinney is a class act guy. But question Dabo's character, Will, come on, man.
All right, thank you very much.
I'm not necessarily questioning his character, but I'm saying that he made some missteps this week. And those are things that I wouldn't have done. I'm not saying that his character is completely soiled in my eyes, but I wouldn't have left Kelly Bryant out there. I would have went with Hunter Johnson, and I would have taken that trip to Alabama. There's things I wouldn't have done.
All right, how does Clemson get into the Final Four? Win out, beat Miami in the ACC championship game. Alabama and Georgia, one of those is going to lose when they play in the SEC championship game. Penn State's going to be playing Ohio State. I think that's this weekend. One of them's going to lose. All Clemson needs to do is win. They'll move back up.
Sure.
There's certainly light there at the end of the tunnel, people.
Still a path.
Top of the hour.
2 of Sports Talk up next with your hosts Phil Kornbluth, Will Pelagic, and the Professor Tom Hayes. Don't leave us hanging. Join the show, 800-956-7266.
All right, we're rolling along here on a Monday. Finally feels like football season around here.
Because people are angry? Is that why?
Well, no, because the weather's turned a little bit chilly, and hopefully it'll stay that way the rest of October and into November, and we can have a delightful, enjoyable outdoor setting for the rest of our games. 800-956-7266, the number. Email talkback@sportstalksc.com. On Twitter at SportsTalkSC. Got some recruiting coming up for you, but we promised we'd take your phone calls. Zach Willis coming up as well, but we promised we would take your phone calls. So let's continue doing that here on this Monday edition of Sports Talk as we go to Stan, the Tiger Man, in Aiken. Hello, Stan the Man.
How's it going, fellas?
Terrific.
I'm just a little bit offended. I'm got to call in and amen. The coach at it was taken up from my main man, Dabo. I'm not going to say but a few words, and I'll get off and listen to y'all. And I know everybody's got opinions, and but I tell you, Mr. Will, I don't think been down here long enough to really know Dabo. He's a man of character. I've been to one of the growling crowds of his. The man, he's awesome Christian for his character. Signed my Bible, and he's a family man, and he loves his players, and he will stand up for them. And I think his record speaks for itself. That's the first one they've lost. They won 12 straight on the road. And, you know, the quarterback hurt. And that's another thing. The main field goal kicker, I don't know. That one they used, Mr. 35-yarder and a 38-yarder, where we could have won with just 3 points. But I don't know. I hate that it happened. I'm not saying he's perfect. And I saw that game with the other fella, not Cooper, but the other one come in. Looked like he hit 5 for 5. But like the other coach said, they see him there at practice, and I don't understand that either, and it somewhat hurts. But you got to admire the man for this. And going in that room, I think that takes a real man of character. I even heard and read in the state paper today, he gave them credit. He said they were wanting it worse than we were, and I watched the game. I didn't miss a minute. They were fighting, and they did good. And you're not going to win them all. I don't care who you are, but he did give them credit, and he's an awesome man. I think as far as going to the reunion, man, I don't see a thing wrong with that. He's with them kids 24/7, and that's
not
me.
For the 3 hours he was in Alabama, he wasn't.
You what now?
Not for the 3 hours he was in Alabama, he wasn't with those kids.
No. I'm talking about. I said he was with the players that he played with back then, and then the Gene Stein, had the heart attack. May die. So I don't see nothing wrong with that trip.
I appreciate the call, Stan. Listen, I will say this. Listen. I'm not questioning the man's character. Like I don't know how you could say that I disagree with decision making equals questioning the man's character. I'm not saying that we're questioning the man's character. I'm saying he made some mistakes. I'm saying it was a mistake to leave Kelly Bryant out there while he was on an injured ankle, basically playing on 1 foot. It was a mistake to put Zerrick Cooper in over Hunter Johnson. And believe me, it was not just me saying this. There were 3 other people I was sitting next to in the same room as Dabo who were saying the exact same damn thing. David Hood from TigerNet was saying the exact same thing. And he pestered him on 2 different questions about why he used Zerrick instead of Hunter Johnson. So it's not just me, okay? So don't come at me and say that I'm questioning Dabo Swinney's character because of a situation he made with a quarterback, okay? It's a false equivalency. So just let's pump the brakes on me questioning Dabo Swinney's character as a Christian and a man. He made 2 different decisions that I would have made. And the thing about Alabama, I want to fight you on that, but it's just I found it a little disrespectful. That's a bit much. I understand.
Towards you?
No, it's a bit towards his team.
Oh, yeah. Now I thought you were talking about the caller being disrespectful towards you.
I don't care what the caller says.
Okay.
I really don't.
All right, 800-956-7266.
I just call him like I see him, man. That's all it is.
That's all you can do. Let's go to I lost my list here. Ted in Sumter. You're up next here on Sports Talk. Hello, Ted.
Hey guys. Hey, I got a comment on Dabo too, but I want to get fired up there like your man did for a minute. Phil, I want you guys to elaborate on something. Listen, I'm a big Florida State fan. I'm a Florida State alum, Florida State fan. Listen, I don't know if you guys have been talking about it a lot, but I know there are a lot of Seminole fans in South Carolina. Charles Kelly, our defensive coordinator, and there's about 2 other coaches on there, Rick Trickett. It's time for these guys to go. Time for them to get fired. And you know what's so funny? We're sitting here talking about Dabo. Dabo, before he went and got Venables, I forget, his record was almost like 500. He fired Kevin Steele when West Virginia scored that 70 points on them. How in the name of God, Charles Kelly is still at FSU when Louisville scored 63 on us last year. Dabo fired Kevin Steele before the plane landed back after that bowl game, and he got himself a defensive coordinator. He's been something like 68-11 since.
Brett Venables is the best defensive coordinator in the country. He is.
Well, yeah. What I'm saying is when somebody embarrasses your program, we're Florida State. When somebody embarrasses your program like that, no one scored 63 points on us at FSU. You fire that man. I don't know what's going on down there, but Charles Kelly needs to be fired. Now, I will say this about Dabo. This did rub me the wrong way. He's a national championship coach now. He's got a lot of press, a lot of respect. When that team beat them, stay out of their locker room. Don't take that glory away from them, and don't go over there condescending and talking down to them like, okay, we're big bad Clemson, y'all beat us. No, let that coach have his day. Let those kids have their moment. Yeah, that's all I'm saying about that. Don't go over there and just condescend and talk down to them. They beat you. You should have called the coach in private, said it at halftime. But I don't like the move of going over there in their locker room, taking that glory and that press away from that coach, that program, and those players. Other than that, I think Dabo is a good guy, but he does make a lot of mistakes like that. Just stay out of people's locker room, and I'll just hang up, guys, and y'all listen.
All right. Thank you very much.
I agree. I don't feel as passionately about that as other people do, but I will say this: it made him more the story than the other team.
I just found it odd. I just found it odd.
I'm not
Regular
as mad
season
about
game, and it wasn't like there were some issues in the game where you wanted to go over there and maybe clear the air on something like that.
Beat.
Look, did he go over to Pitt's locker room last year and congratulate them when they beat him in a championship setting? Maybe I get it. I just regular season game like that, but hey, Dabo does Dabo things, and that was a Dabo thing. To Boyd in Manning. Hello, Boyd. Welcome to Sports Talk.
Hey guys, I just wanted to call in here, and I'm gonna go with the crowd and take up for Dabo a little bit. I just want to say I have absolutely no problem with him going to Alabama. They have 2 weeks off, and these are lifelong friends. I had no problem with him going to Syracuse locker room. I think it shows a lot of class, and the thing that nobody's mentioning is how the Syracuse players loved it. They've all talked about it ever since then. The other thing, I really didn't have a problem with Kelly Bryant starting. He was throwing the ball pretty well, and I think that was the game plan for him to throw it more. And the ankle injury, I don't think had anything to do with the, concussion. So, I mean, that part I'm a little wishy on, but also I'd like to say,
the dude couldn't move. He couldn't move in the second quarter. I had no problem with him starting the game because in the first drive he looked fine, but in the second quarter he could not move. He just couldn't move. He was out there. He was a sitting duck for Syracuse. It was getting blown up and getting up slower every time. It was a sitting duck.
If he was a pocket passer, he would have been a sitting duck as well. So, I mean, just because he's a dual threat doesn't. I mean, it took part of his game away.
He couldn't protect.
However, if he was a pocket passer, if he was Peyton Manning, he would have got hit just as much.
Well, I mean, again, and I think Will's right on this. I mean, part of what makes Kelly Bryant a successful quarterback is his ability to move.
Right.
And if he's limited because of an ankle injury, that takes away part of his game. And I disagree. I mean, he wouldn't be like a Peyton Manning because he'd have the ability to run away from a collapsing sack and save himself.
He's playing on one leg, Phil.
Yeah, I don't disagree with what you're saying there. I noticed in the opening series, even when they scored quickly, he looked like he was hobbling out there a little bit in that opening series when the Tigers scored very quickly. And it just, ankle injuries are hard to overcome in just 3 or 4 days of rest. And, obviously he wasn't completely over it. Okay, we'll be right back.
The guys are always checking email. Send your comments or questions to talkback@sportstalksc.com. Now, more of Sports Talk from Columbia's Main Street.
Been a very busy edition of Sports Talk tonight. South Carolina Radio Network, made possible by your local electric cooperatives, your South Carolina Electric Cooperative, sponsor of the Touchstone Energy Cooperatives Bowl. And to find out more about what the great folks with the co-ops are doing all across the state, visit their website, ecsc.org. And, of course, mark it down, December 9th, Touchstone Energy Cooperatives Bowl. And a week from tonight, we'll have the rosters for that game for you here on Sports Talk.
I feel like I've been baptized in orange aid today. A little bit.
Mm-hmm.
A little bit.
Maybe so. Welcome to South Carolina.
Yeah.
Let's welcome in Zach Willis, 1st and 10 with Coach Zach Willis. How are you?
Doing good, Phil. How you guys doing?
Well, we're having a hot time in the old town tonight.
I hear.
Yeah. Well, let's get at it. Why'd Clemson lose?
Well, it wasn't the quarterback's fault. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to say it didn't have anything to do with the game, but really when you look at this whole situation, it comes down to their defensive backfield play. It's just really, really subpar. The scheme, I was really shocked that they let the leading receiver in the country go one-on-one with Fields, who's not exactly a lockdown corner, and they did it in critical situations. I mean, Syracuse even put 3 receivers into the boundary, moved Ishmael to the field, and they never floated a safety over the top to help that kid out all night long, and it killed them. And then they blew coverages and gave up easy touchdowns. You know, they held Auburn down. They held Louisville down. Who would have thought Syracuse would have scored more points on them than Louisville on the road or Virginia Tech?
Now, we've had quite a heated discussion here tonight, courtesy of Mr. Pelagic, about the logic of using Kelly Bryant in this game at all, considering he wasn't 100%. I think you could see that from the get-go. Your thoughts on playing him?
You know, I'm going to have to side with Will. I don't like it. No offense, Will. But, you know, here's the thing, 97 carries in 6 games. Kelly Bryant, and I mentioned this maybe our second week when they played Auburn, he takes full-on shots. He's not elusive. He's a straight up and down runner. He's not a durable enough guy. I don't know really who is to run the ball that much with his build. And I think the concussion was a cumulative thing. It was a lick he took it on and knocked him out. He just hit the ground. And he was out. And it tells me that the damage had already been done. It was a cumulative concussion. I'm not a doctor, but I've been around this game long enough to know, you know, he got immobilized with his ankle. He was already taking full-on shots when he was 100%. He's not that kind of quarterback. And he's a great quarterback, but they're just going to have to be careful how they use him. And what an unfortunate way to find it out.
Just to be clear, Zach, I was saying they should have taken him out.
Well, I think that, you know, I don't know what the doctors told Dabo. We weren't in the room, but man, he was limping. He broke away early in the game, and I support of what you're saying. And he was limping. He couldn't make a 2-yard run. Kelly Bryant at full speed, he breaks that thing for 20 or 30 yards. He just went by pounds. And you know, they were blowing. The big thing too is they were blowing. They weren't focused as the team. The Friday night game, I hate Friday night college football. I'm not going to be shy about saying that's for high school. And Clemson doesn't need the TV time. They're the defending national champions. I don't know who makes those decisions. I'm not going to get into that, but Kelly Bryant was definitely not 100%. He may have been 75 after what I saw when he limped around. I thought maybe they put somebody in and just play their defense, but their defense let them down.
True.
The defense let them down, and special teams did too in a big way.
Well, this is a conference thing, and like this week, Florida State's got to play at Boston College. So on Friday night, this is an ACC thing. What does it? Do you think maybe the fact that they went with him at less than 100% shows a lack of confidence in the backups at this point?
Well, their backups are so young, and you know, there's a big talk. I haven't had a chance to talk to anybody down there. Not that they probably right now they're closing ranks, and they should. A good coaching staff does. I would think that they had to believe he was more healthy than he was, and he got in the ball game, and they for some reason, and we can't read their minds, evidently we're not confident in the backup behind them. I got to believe that as badly as he was limping around out there, you've got to, and it affected his throwing motion, it affected everything. And it ultimately cost him. I mean, that was a pretty serious concussion.
Mm-hmm. Talking with Zach Willis, 1st and 10 with Zach Willis on this Monday night edition of Sports Talk. So how do you think you talked about Clemson closing ranks after this loss? Last year they lost a game. They weren't severely damaged in the rankings, and they won, and others continued to lose, and they moved back up. So Dabo can certainly draw on that experience with this team. Now, he doesn't have Deshaun Watson to bail him out at quarterback like he's
got that defense, though, and all they've got to do in that game is make 2 easy field goals. Make one of them, get it overtime, I believe you win, and change your coverage. This is where defensive coordinators hopping around acting like crazy men need to stabilize, because that's a no-huddle offense. Those kids are tired chasing the ball around and getting lined up. He's got to be stationary. You don't need to be having to have a get-back coach now. You need to settle down, call the defense, and think through things. If they would have simply changed their coverage, they would have won that game by 2 touchdowns.
Switching gears. Go ahead, Zach. Finish.
Just basically, it's a coverage where you play a safety over the weak side corner. It's the #1 receiver in the nation, Phil.
Mm-hmm.
And it ain't because he ain't talented. They had a talented quarterback, but you could tell Syracuse was doing everything they could to get that matchup. Fields gave poor effort twice when they tied the ball game up and Syracuse went down the field. I rewound it. He's supposed to come on a corner blitz. They left Tanner Muse one-on-one with him, a safety, 225-pound safety, who's a great player but not a man-to-man player. And you could tell the corner didn't know whether or not he's supposed to go. It's just a bad night for him. But I will say this: Dabo Swinney is the best at rallying the troops when they're down. He'll create a common goal. Those kids are high-character kids. I wouldn't want to play them next. I can tell you that.
Yeah, no, he did not have a good game, did Fields. Switching gears to South Carolina, Zach, another great effort from the defense. I would say an incomplete effort from the offense. How would you evaluate the Gamecocks now with back-to-back wins in conference?
Well, first of all, I would say this, down the stretch, they were more physical than Tennessee. There's no doubt about it. I thought they were improved. The biggest thing, they made field goals. And I just wonder when major college coaches are going to start offering field goal kicker scholarships and actively recruiting, because how many games have we seen won or lost on their legs already this year all over the country and every year? But as far as overall, the 98-yard drive they had, and it came, they ended up scoring best drive of the year. They did it off 2 plays. The zone read with Bentley keeping it and the jet sweep to Turner. And they never went back to those 2 plays. Now, their defense, they rested on their defense. And honestly, Tennessee is horrendous in the red zone. They knew that. I think they played to that. They almost gave it away, but they stopped them short. And Tennessee's red zone offense basically won the game for South Carolina.
Yeah, I mean, how often as a defensive coach, you give a team 3 shots from the 2-yard line and you keep them out of the end zone? That's just so rare. It's just because in today's world, the offenses usually they spread you out, they sneak and you've got a mobile quarterback in Garantano. I mean, it was such a hard cover for South Carolina on that last drive to make sure they had everything accounted for in what Tennessee could do.
Well, the thing is, Tennessee they've got all that talent. They can't get it. They can't get those kids to play together. And they play 2 teams back to back. They're in death spirals. Basically, the head coaches lost control of the teams. You can tell watching them play. They're uninspired. They don't have confidence in the game plan. And Muschamp Hill is cool. He managed the game really, really well as a head coach. I thought it was his best game I've watched. And South Carolina, their offensive line was not perfect. They still got problems. But they showed up in the 4th quarter. It wasn't perfect, but, man, it was a big improvement. And then defensively, they had 1 big bust, and where in the past they would have crumbled, they gave up a huge completion, and really they should have been in 4 deep coverage, not 3 deep coverage. But, hey, you know what? They rallied back. They kept fighting and grinding, and they won the ball game.
All right, hang on, Coach. Going to come back with you for a couple of more minutes. 1st and 10 with Zach Willis.
Now back to Sports Talk, South Carolina's most listened to sports talk show for more than 30 years.
Did you stir the pot in the recruiting world here today, Corn?
I didn't do a thing. Recruiting coming up here shortly. A little bit more First and 10 with Zach Willis here on Sports Talk. Just to finish up with you and on the Gamecock side of things, what did you see in those last 3 plays in the secondary that helped them, save their backside in that game? What did you see coverage-wise?
First of all, they just locked up with guys. They didn't have to think. They just got to play. And they do have good athletes back there. They got seniors that Spurrier recruited. Wills brought some guys in there that have done a good job. And they got physical with the receivers and ran with them. And they just refused to get beat. And it was really nice to see in Neyland Stadium them gut one out and beat Tennessee.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just a great effort. And I do want to go back. You guys were asking about playing the quarterback at Clemson. I gave it some thought. Probably what I would have done is started with one of the young guys, whoever I had most confidence in, and if he struggled, then put Bryant in there at that point.
With a limited game
save
plan.
him if he was damaged. That's my best guess. But, South Carolina, you got to be happy. They've won 2 games in the past. They might have given away.
True.
But they found ways to win 2. They blew Arkansas out. But early on, that was a tough game, and they beat 2 teams that they're better than. They're not a lot better than, evenly matched. And going into Tennessee and winning, as you know, is no easy task. I don't care who they got on the team. So kudos to the Gamecocks because they could have folded the tents right there, Phil. You know that. I know that's why you're asking.
I fully expected them to lose. I did. I fully expected them to lose.
Here's the deal. The Louisiana Tech game was a make or break for their season. And Bentley drove them down the field, won the confidence of his teammates. That's his team now. Again, that's a big, big deal in the psychology of the team. And also that coaching staff gelled. They began to realize, hey, we can find a way to win. And they found a way to win this game, whereas old Gamecock fans, they're going to find a way to lose. They just know, there goes that long pass against cover 3. Oh, there we go. We're going to crumble. And they didn't. They bowed their backs and won. And I say, hey, I criticize them when I think it's fair. But I think it's fair to say congratulations on a well-managed, hard-fought win. They're not a great team, but, hey, they're 5-2. And that's a whole lot better than 2-5.
One thing for each team to work on for the bye week really quick, Zach.
I think South Carolina's got to continue with their offensive line. They're still got a long way to go there. I don't like their blocking scheme, their pass pro scheme. When they went big on big, it was good. Clemson, I think they psychologically, they just got to regroup. They got what they need there. Get the young quarterback ready. Dabo will rally the troops, and I think they'll be fine.
Coach, thank you so much. Have a great week, and we will talk to you next week. Believe me, First and 10.
Look forward to it, guys. Take care.
First and 10 has no off week, and neither does Sports Talk.
Guy's so good, man.
Oh, he's great.
So
Thank
good.
you, Zach Willis, for joining us. Let's shift gears and welcome in David Shelton of the High School Sports Report and the Charleston Post and Courier. And before we get to the high school stuff, what in the heck is going on with Charleston Southern that we've seen you tweeting about this afternoon?
Got to feed them. Got to feed the boys.
What's the deal?
Well, boys ain't getting enough food. No, it's literally the service, the vendor Aramark Food Services runs the dining hall for CSU. It's their baby, and they close too early, like at 7:30 at night, and a lot of the football players are not getting they're not getting there in time, or they're not getting enough to eat because they quit putting the food out. And those big 300-pounders need to eat more than one time through the old bar, kind of like you, Phil, at the Golden Corral.
No.
But they, so the players, just decided to protest a little bit and took the logos and decals off their helmets. And it certainly got their attention because I was around there today and things are moving. I'm going there tomorrow during dinner to see how it works. And, I think the protests work. Now I think they get a little extended hours on the dining hall. I think they ought to put the decals back on and play the rest of the season. But it certainly was, I don't know how much of a distraction it was to the players, but it certainly caught a lot of people's eyes on Saturday when the white helmets, when they went with the Penn State look, and that was not what they're used to. So it caught the attention of the administration, and I think things are going to work out in the short run, to be honest. But this has been a problem for years. I mean, I don't know. I spoke to a player today, and I said, "You realize I was there in 1985 as a student, and the calf sucked then too." So, it's a 30-year-old problem that hadn't been solved, but at least they're getting it solved.
Now, they took off the decals for the game, off the helmet and all that stuff. So, I mean, we're talking like the coaches were in on this as well. I mean, things like that don't happen without coaching staff acknowledgement.
Not from what I gather, I don't think the coaches were extremely supportive of the move to remove the decals, but they were very supportive of the cause and the reasoning. They just felt like, they could have played. They didn't really want to doctor the helmet, and so there was a little bit of rub there. But they supported the players. I mean, there's no friction on the team between the coaches and players. I spoke to several people today that said, no, this is not a coaches versus players thing. This was a football players versus the cafeteria, which in effect was against the administration because they have the power to change it. And they never did, but now they have, I think, and things should get better.
Well, they have had their issues there within that cafeteria causing problems. Well, cafeteria or the bookstore and snacks and things like that, which caused the problems last year for Jamie Chadwell.
Yeah, and the bookstore also is an operated entity outside of the university. Barnes & Nobles runs that. So in both cases, it was not a university-run organization, if you want to call it that. It was outside vendors who have agreements to run the bookstore and the caf with the school. So it's kind of weird that, you go outside of your university and get people to do the work for you, and you get in a bunch of trouble. So
if it's kosher to do so, David, we'll ask you about your main beat, which is, of course, the high school beat. What stood out to you this past week?
Oh, I don't know. There were some good games. There wasn't a lot of upsets. I thought Gaffney beating Boiling Springs the way they beat him kind of, Gaffney's just kind of great one week and not so good the next. But if they can put it together, they certainly have the personnel. I think, the T.O. Hannas, the South Points, the really good teams are all winning. Lamar in Class A. Got some big games coming up, though. Over the next 2 weeks, there'll be some region titles decided. I don't think there's a bigger game in the state Friday night than Spring Valley Dutch Fort. I mean, I just think that's going to be a great football game. One of the better games in the Midlands in years, I think.
With thinking back to this past Friday night, though, Fort Dorchester, we saw them continue to explode on offense. We talked on Friday night about, could there be a little bit of a tussle in that game? But it turned out once again, nobody's slowing these guys down at all. Yeah,
I understand. They some of their players took offense to the fact that I said their starters would have to play the second half. And so they scored 49 points in the first half and didn't have to play the second half. So they're making a habit out of that. That's 5 games in a row where they've had at least a 49-point lead at halftime. So and I got to tell you now, their offense is really good. But I've said this before: the best defense they've ever had in their school's history. Way better defense overall than they had 2 years ago when they went 15-0. They had to outscore people 2 years ago. This team, you give them 21 points and it's a done deal. They're very good on defense.
And I guess Gamecock fans want to know from you, since you're down there, you see him all the time, how is Joyner progressing towards being a complete quarterback?
He's not being asked to do a whole lot, obviously, because, the way the games are going, but he's still putting up 4 to 5 touchdowns a game. He's still, in my opinion, he's still much better runner than he is thrower, but he's good. He's a good enough passer. I just don't think he's SEC ready to pass, but he's certainly a guy with the way he can run. He could be involved in some sort of package, especially inside the 10 next year for the Gamecocks. I definitely could see that.
Okay, David. Thank you, my man. Look forward to getting back with you on Friday nights and looking ahead to that big game in the Midlands, Dutch Fork and Spring Valley, one of the biggest regular season games in this part of the states in a number of years. David Shelton, best in business, we call him, from the High School Sports Report, Charleston Post and Courier. Back in a moment. All right, we got Mick Mixon coming up in just a moment. Talk about the Panthers. David Shelton, of course, from the High School Sports Reports, visiting with us a moment ago, and his report, of course, here on Sports Talk, brought to you by Farm Bureau Insurance. With new auto insurance rates from Farm Bureau Insurance, you could be saving a whole lot of money. Even if you received a quote before, rates are now more competitive than ever, so get a no-obligation quote today at favrates.com. All right, a few quick recruiting notes, and then we'll get to Mr. Mixon. Linebacker Dax Holyfield of Shelby, North Carolina, went to North Carolina over the weekend. He told the UNC 24/7 sports site, the Tar Heels are now out front, quote, probably my leader today, he said. Then tonight he tweets he doesn't have a leader. And when he names a leader, that will be his commitment. He's taken officials to Florida State and USC as well, going to Virginia Tech this weekend for the North Carolina game and Stanford in January. USC and Clemson target defensive back J.C. Horn. Alpharetta, Georgia, a Tennessee commitment, went to Alabama Saturday for the Arkansas game. Running back Lynn J. Dixon of Butler, Georgia, decommitted from Tennessee Saturday, reopening his recruiting. Clemson has been on his short list since back when he committed to the Vols, and figure the Tigers do to be in the hunt here once again. Defensive end K.J. Henry, Clemens, North Carolina, takes his visit to Virginia Tech this weekend. He's also been officially to Georgia, is scheduled for Clemson on the 27th. USC and Alabama also get visits. And tonight, offensive lineman Richard Gurridge of Tampa announced officially his final two schools as Clemson and Florida.
Newton's going to throw. End zone, left side, McCaffrey caught it. Touchdown. Newton has the shotgun snap. Being pressured. Newton unfurls the pass, and it is intercepted. This time caught cleanly over the middle by Mills. Mills falls down at the 16-yard line. Just took himself down.
All right, the voice of the Panthers, Mick Mixon, joins us now, going back to Thursday's loss to Philadelphia. Disappointing in so many ways, I would say.
Eagles are good. Might see that team again if the Panthers can get into the postseason. Corn, their defense was turned up. It was weird though. Drop passes. A lot of talk about the Panthers' inability to run the ball and the minus yardage runs, and that definitely needs to be talked about. And of course, a lot of focus on Cam Newton and what he does or doesn't do. But there were some drop passes in that game that were costly. The receivers certainly could have helped the cause by catching the ball more cleanly. How did you see the action from Thursday night?
I agree with you. I mean, mistakes were made, balls were dropped. I think they're still asking Cam to carry too much of the running game. I mean, you look at the stats, Mick, and outside of Newton, there's nobody else getting anything in the running game. At least I know they were playing a pretty good defensive team, but they got to get some more from their running backs.
I think it was, I don't have the numbers right in front of me, but I think it was all the non-Newton runners were 13 carries for 1 yard.
Yeah,
right.
You're right.
I know that it's hard to be stubborn on the run there, Mick, but I mean, when you're basically 52 passes to 25 runs, I mean, that doesn't seem like a huge commitment to the run, and especially when 11 of those are from Cam Newton.
Hard to know what to do if you're behind and the run's not working and you're getting stoned in the run game. One of the reporters asked Coach Rivera on Friday about the number of east-west runs, running the ball laterally. And Coach Rivera made a good point. He said most of those didn't start out that way. They started out as hit the hole, but then you get clocked and jarred backward. Then you're trying to do something and trying to go east and west. It just wasn't very pretty. Too many missed assignments. Happily, we may get Ryan Khalil back for the Chicago trip, and we might get Kurt Coleman back for that trip.
Talking with Mick Mixon, voice of the Panthers. Kuechly got hurt in the game, correct, or concussion?
He's in the concussion protocol, Corn. There was some confusion about whether he actually has a concussion. ESPN reported over the weekend that he didn't have a concussion. It was more of a neck and a shoulder, but the Panthers adjusted that today just to make sure everybody knows that he is in the concussion protocol. His status has not changed. It does seem to be pretty mild, as if there's such a thing as mild head trauma. Kuechly's been in the building, been in great spirits, and seems to, by everybody who's talked to him, like his old self.
Yeah, mild head trauma is something that happens to somebody else. To you, it's serious head trauma if it's your head.
Or Luke Kuechly's head, which probably would be the most Panther fans' second favorite head after their own.
Yeah, no question.
What do we know about the Bears?
Oh, the Bears are interesting. They made the quarterback change to Mitch Trubisky, and Trubisky has done some nice things, but he's still getting accustomed. He's still got that, he's streaky now, like all rookies. He'll go 6-7 good plays in a row, and then he'll make a throw that's indicative that he's still not quite coached up on what NFL defenders are capable of. An NFL corner can catch up to the ball in the air. I mean, they just have an uncanny ability. They're not like most college secondaries. Playing them at their place, John Fox being their coach, they'll be a handful, but I think hopefully the Panthers can play well and win.
Hey, Mick, I know the NFL is pure business, but these are humans too, and they have their buddies and their respect for others around the league. And of course, Cam's been down with his injuries, and Brady's been down with his injuries. And what do you think the feeling is throughout locker rooms around the league with Aaron Rodgers going down with his injury?
Anguish, just the respect that Aaron Rodgers trades in around the league. I talked to Julius Peppers about Aaron Rodgers, and Julius Peppers, very smart. He reads a lot. He's much more there than many people might think at first blush. Peppers told me at Camp Wofford Corn, he said, when he was with the Packers, he said, we went into every single game knowing that we were going to win. Mm-hmm. We didn't always win, but when you got Aaron Rodgers, there's just something about that guy that you believe that you're going to win the game.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a disappointing day for all us cheeseheads around the world. But you know what? You got to believe in your backup, and I think now that he'll get to work with the first-team offense this week, then get a bye week, can do you guys a favor, and vice versa. You beat the Bears, Packers beat the Saints. I think we'll both be happy.
Let's do it, man. That's the deal. We finally found some common ground with your Packer fetish.
By the way, with the news that came
out
on Friday about North Carolina, I mean, did you burn your diploma? What did you do with it?
Well, there's a big difference between being not guilty and being innocent.
Okay, OJ.
I guess I should just leave it there and just say that some time needs to pass. It's an inglorious chapter in the UNC history and the ACC's history, but just move on and hopefully some years will go by.
So what you're telling me is you have that diploma sitting in a prominent place on your wall in gold.
Well, I had to consume a lot of malt beverage to get it, so I'm proud of it.
See?
But it was a different day back then. No, it's, everybody had to go to school somewhere, but I love living in the Palmetto State. When I first started working there, Corn, a lot of Gamecock and Clemson fans would, they brace you up against the wall. They want to know, where'd you go to school? Where do your loyalties lie?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Nobody thought of you as a Tar Heel till you went to work for him. And you've gotten that out of your system now since you're with the Panthers.
I learned from you. I learned from the best. Stay neutral.
Yeah, right. Thank you, my pal. Have a great week. Good luck against the Bears. Come through for me, and I'll do the same for you.
Sounds good, Corn.
Thank you, man. Mick Mixon, voice of the Panthers. We're just sitting here watching the
Clemson game.
Into the second quarter, and I mean, yeah, you cannot watch that game and not see Kelly Bryant playing on one leg out there. This is my first chance to see it because I was traveling on Friday, haven't had a chance to really sit down and look at it. Saw some of it earlier today, but he definitely was he might not even have been 60% out there.
I feel vindicated.
Did you feel like you needed vindication?
No.
Okay.
But I feel vindicated anytime I feel like you agree with me on something.
It's dangerous. We'll continue this, I'm sure, tomorrow night.
Yeah, I'll be in Nashville, though.
Talk to you then.
Have some hot chicken.
Thank you, Brian. Have a great night, everybody.